My name is Robin Hoffmeister, and I'm 33 years old. I've spent most of my adult life being what my family liked to call the responsible one. What they really meant was the one who could never say no. Stable job, no kids yet, no messy debts, no chaos. A senior software engineer. A six-figure salary, long hours, and the kind of exhaustion that people mistake for success. For years, every paycheck I earned seemed to have someone else's name on it. A couple hundred for mom's unexpected dental bill. 1,000 for my sister's boyfriend's new tires because he's practically family. A fridge for my parents. A vacation fund, loan for my sister Jasmine. Emergency money for my mom, twice this month alone. And then came the engagement party. Jasmine's big vineyard celebration, paid for mostly by me. $8,000 for the venue deposit. A few thousand more sprinkled across planners, tastings, decor samples, whatever she waved at me with teary gratitude that lasted exactly 3 seconds before flipping into expectation. No one ever asked how I was doing. They only asked how I could help. I arrived at the vineyard already feeling done. Not angry, just hollow, like someone who'd finally reached the last inch of a rope she didn't even know she'd been climbing. The plan had been simple. Show up, smile, clap for Jasmine's happiness, and quietly shift into less involved sister mode. But then Jasmine stood up in her glittering silver dress, glass raised, fiancé's hand wrapped around her waist. The room hushed. She smiled like she'd rehearsed it in the mirror. "To family," she began, letting her voice linger for dramatic effect, "and to the ones who finally learned to stay quiet and be useful." The laughter hit me like a slap, soft at first, then growing, rippling across the tables, the chandelier catching the glint of wine glasses and teeth. My mother smirked. My father nodded. Jasmine's fiancé, Aaron, kissed her temple like she'd just told the cutest joke he'd ever heard. I didn't move, didn't blink, just felt years of swallowed bitterness sit up in my chest and finally ask, "So this is what they think of you? A tool, a wallet with legs, an accessory to make them look better." I stood, lifted my glass, smiled with all the chilled clarity of someone who just stopped caring. "To quiet usefulness," I echoed softly, "and to the $8,000 venue deposit." The room froze. Jasmine choked on her drink. Aaron's mother blinked rapidly. My aunt leaned toward her husband and whispered, "Wait, what did she say?" I set my glass down gently on the table, leaned forward slightly, and looked straight at Jasmine. "Oh," I added casually, "and I canceled everything this morning. The venue, the catering, the photographer, all of it." Silence cracked open like the sound of ice splitting in winter. My mother shot up from her seat. "Robin, what do you think you're doing?" My father pointed at me like I had just burned the house down. "You're sabotaging your sister's life." Aaron's parents looked like they'd wandered into the wrong party entirely. The murmurs turned into chaos, voices rising like a storm, accusations, outrage, gasping disbelief. And then, from the back of the room, a familiar voice cut through everything. "She warned you." Uncle Rick, the only person in that entire room who had never asked me for a single dollar, who spoke to me like a human being and not a walking emergency fund. He walked toward me, shaking his head at the mess. "You ready to leave, kiddo?" he asked. I swallowed the lump in my throat, nodded. And together, we walked out of the vineyard, past the shocked faces, past the biting whispers, past decades of unspoken obligation, leaving them with their unpaid vendors, their entitlement, and their carefully rehearsed toast lines. The sun hit my face as we stepped outside, warm and steady. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. The calls began before I even woke up the next morning. My phone buzzed so hard it fell off the nightstand. 11 missed calls from Mom, 4 from Dad, 2 from Jasmine, and a cluster of texts that looked like corporate memos mixed with emotional blackmail. Not one started with, "I'm sorry." My mother's first message was 3 paragraphs long, starting with, "We need to talk about what happened last night," and ending with, "You can't just walk away from family when things don't go your way." Somewhere in the middle, she squeezed in her greatest hit. "Everyone counts on you, Robin. You have a responsibility to set an example." Right, because somewhere along the line, my role shifted from daughter to service provider. Jasmine's message came next. "Really, Robin? You couldn't just talk to me first?" Talk to her? Before or after she humiliated me in front of 80 people? Her fiancé Aaron's father sent an email. Subject line, "Your behavior at the engagement party." I didn't open it immediately. When I eventually did, it read exactly as expected. Professional outrage, disappointment, veiled threats, and a subtle order for me to reimburse them for the photographer they graciously flew in from Seattle. He ended it with, "Actions have consequences." He wasn't wrong. He just didn't realize I had finally decided to start handing those consequences back. The only person I responded to was Uncle Rick. He called that evening, voice slow and steady, like he was checking on a friend after a storm. "You holding up?" he asked. "No," I admitted, "but I'm not drowning either." He didn't ask me to fix things. Didn't tell me to apologize, just said, "I'm proud of you. You did what none of us ever had the guts to do." Then he mentioned Aunt Diane was furious, claimed he was encouraging my bad behavior. He brushed it off with a snort. "She'll get over it, or she won't. I'm too old for this circus." But the real shift came 3 days later. I was in my kitchen making coffee when someone knocked on my door. I peeked through the peephole only to see my father standing there. No warning, no text, nothing. I almost didn't open it, but I knew if I didn't, he'd just keep coming back. He stepped inside without waiting for an invite. Didn't sit, didn't raise his voice. He just stood there stiffly and said, "You owe your sister this." I blinked. "Why?" His face twisted like he wasn't expecting a question. Then, flatly, he replied, "Because you're the one who can." Everything clicked. They never saw my help as generosity, just obligation. I could, so I should. I met his eyes and said quietly, "I'm done, Dad." He stared at me like I had spoken another language. Then I opened the front door and waited. He walked out slowly, as if the world wasn't aligning the way he expected. After he left, I sat on the floor for a long time, not crying, just realizing how deeply I had let myself be used. Later that night, I dug out the documents for the black SUV I had bought my parents 3 years ago. It was still in my name, my insurance, my responsibility. I had never transferred the title. Now that mattered. If I was done being the family safety net, I had to act like it. 4 more days passed. No apology, no reflection, no ownership from anyone. Then Jasmine texted, "Fine, you made your point. Can we move on now?" Move on. Like I had pointed out a typo, not funded half her life. That was the moment I made my decision. The next morning, I called my insurance company, updated the address to a storage facility, and removed the SUV from my parents' policy. Then I rented a tow truck. By noon, I was standing on my parents' driveway with the spare key. My mother opened the door, eyes red and furious. "What do you think you're doing?" "Taking back what's mine." "You can't. It was a gift. In my name. On my insurance. Paid monthly by me." A gift doesn't require the giver to keep paying forever. The tow truck driver hooked the SUV as she shouted, calling me cruel, selfish, dramatic. I didn't argue, didn't flinch, just signed the release form and watched years of financial guilt get lifted onto the truck's flatbed. As it pulled away, I exhaled, slowly, not triumphant, just free. That night, the family group chat exploded. "Aunt Diane, you're tearing this family apart over a joke." My cousin, "Seriously? A car? You're insane." Jasmine, "Mom is crying. Are you happy?" Dad stayed silent. But Aaron's parents, they sent another email demanding partial payment for the photographer again. The only text that didn't irritate me came from someone unexpected. Aaron's mother. It read, "We didn't realize how much you were doing until you stopped. That's on us." It didn't fix anything, but it was the first true thing anyone besides Rick had said. And then came the twist I didn't see coming. The one that flipped everything upside down. Jasmine called me, crying. Really crying, voice shaking. "Robin, I need to tell you something about Aaron." I didn't speak, just listened. And as she told me what she discovered, I realized Jasmine wasn't just entitled. She was trapped. And Aaron? Aaron had been using her the same way my family used me, only worse. Jasmine's voice trembled so hard I barely recognized it. "Robin, he opened a joint bank account under my name without telling me." I sat up straighter. "What?" "He used my personal information. He applied for a loan to cover the wedding costs, part of that same $8,000 mess." Her breath hitched. "If I hadn't looked at the mail, I'd be legally tied to it. He said it was a temporary fix and I was overreacting." Typical. Entitlement wearing a polite smile. I didn't say I told you so, didn't lecture her, didn't take the easy victory. I just let her talk. "He blames you," she whispered, "for everything." Of course he did. People like Aaron never blame themselves. Not when there's a convenient woman nearby to absorb the punishment. "Jasmine," I said quietly, "you deserve better than someone using you to fund his performance." She sobbed harder. And in that moment, I finally saw it clearly. My family didn't just use me. They learned to use each other. This wasn't a broken moment. It was a pattern. One I was finally stepping out of. The final snap. By the end of the week, I had blocked everyone except Uncle Rick. But drama doesn't die easily. Mom somehow got my work number and called, launching into the same script she always used. How could you do this to your sister? She's suffering. This is your fault. I took a deep breath. Mom, giving out my work number is harassment. Harassment? Are you serious? I am your mother. I'm blocking this number, and I'm reporting it to HR. And I did. For once in my life, I didn't soften anything. That night, Rick stopped by my apartment with takeout and a tired smile. She went after your workplace? Damn, Diane would have done the same. How's everything with you? I asked. He sighed. Not good. Diane thinks I'm choosing sides. You're choosing reality. He smirked. That's exactly what I told her. Then he dropped the biggest twist yet. Your dad tried getting a lawyer to make you pay for the canceled wedding. I blinked. What? He got laughed out of the office. Nothing was in writing, but it shows how far they'll go. Of course it did. They'd rather sue me than admit I didn't owe them anything. I stared at the warm takeout box in my hands and felt my stomach twist. For the first time, I wasn't sad. I wasn't angry. I was done. Truly, quietly done. Maybe that's what freedom actually feels like. Not rage or triumph, but a deep, clean emptiness where obligations used to be. The letters that changed everything. The next morning, I wrote separate letters to each family member. Clear, calm, final. No more financial support. No more loans disguised as emergencies. No more guilt texts or late-night manipulations. No more expecting me to fix their lives. When I dropped the envelopes into the mailbox, it felt like dropping weights from my shoulders. Then I booked a one-way flight. Just me, a carry-on, and no forwarding address. I left the spare key with Rick. Didn't tell my parents. Didn't tell Jasmine. Didn't tell anyone else. That first week away was strange, quiet, unsettling. Trauma has a way of making peace feel suspicious. By the second week, I realized I hadn't thought about them. Not once. Not the guilt, not the obligations, not the endless demands. Just me, my life, my choices. For the first time, I tasted what my life could have been all along, if I hadn't been raised to serve. I called Rick from a cafe with terrible Wi-Fi and told him, I don't think I'm coming back soon. You owe yourself the time they stole, he said softly. Then he told me everything unfolding back home. Jasmine canceled the engagement. She learned Aaron had also used some of my venue deposit money on himself, then blamed her for questioning him. Aaron moved back to live with his parents. His mother, who had emailed me politely before, was now considering legal action against him. My parents tried to patch things up with Aaron's family. It failed spectacularly. Rick moved out. Diane accused him of betraying family unity. He told her, if unity means ignoring reality, I'm not interested. I listened in silence. It was all falling apart. Every illusion, every fake peace, every unspoken rule that kept us chained. And none of it had anything to do with me anymore, returning as someone new. I stayed away for 2 months. When I returned, I didn't tell anyone. I didn't need a welcome or a confrontation. Rick found out through my smart lock notification and showed up with dumplings and a relieved grin. Diane filed for separation, he said. She'll blame us, but honestly, I feel lighter. He didn't look heartbroken. He looked free. Jasmine? I asked. She moved into a tiny studio, says she's figuring out who she is without depending on anyone. Good. She needed that. And my parents? Rick shrugged. Still angry. Still silent. Of course they were. Silence was their favorite weapon and their greatest weakness. I started therapy. Told my therapist the truth. I don't want to fix it. I just want to stop feeling guilty. She nodded and said something that stuck with me. Guilt is just a scar from when we let people cut too deep. Choosing peace over blood. Now, I freelance, earn a little less, sleep a lot better. I cook for myself, sit at my dining table instead of eating over the sink, reply to my own needs instead of everyone else's emergencies. And the best part? I only pay for my own mess. For the first time in my life, I'm not anyone's solution. I'm just Robin, a woman who finally learned the simplest truth. Families don't get to call exploitation love, and I don't have to carry what they hand me. I didn't come back to be who I was. I came back to stay who I became when I finally walked away.